This is a box score-based measurement that estimates a player's performance relative to the league average, and it's expressed on a per 100 possessions basis. What that means is, okay, if a player has a BPM of 5, that means he is 5 points better than an average player over 100 possessions. Anything above 8 is very good, and anything in double digits is unquestionable. The highest ever BPM was 2009 LeBron James, 12.99. Value over replacement player, VORP. This converts BPM into an estimate of each player's overall contribution to the team. So, basically it tells us how valuable a player is versus replacing that player with someone else, or a replacement player. In this case, defined as a minimum salary player not in a rotation. Same as BPM, anything above 8 is very good, and anything in double digits is unquestionable. The highest ever VORP was 1988 Michael Jordan, 11.8. Win shares, WS. This is an estimate of the number of team wins a player is responsible for on his team during a particular season. If you add up all the win shares on a team, it'll equal up to somewhere near 82, which is the number of games in a season. Anything near 15 typically means an MVP caliber season. 1972 Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has the highest WS ever at 25.37. Now, one of two things just happened in that stats section before. Either you started listening to it and were like, wow, this is interesting. Or you started listening to it and were like, nah, fuck this, and then skipped it. If you're in that second group, all you need to know is that whenever a stat gets mentioned somewhere, high numbers are good and low numbers are bad. 9. The phrase, "and other things," that appears in the title of this book. What does it mean? It means that on occasion, some of the basketball conversations in here will go sideways for a second. The reason I did it that way is because that's how talking about basketball works for me, which means that's how writing about basketball works for me. I don't think in my life I have ever had a conversation about basketball that traveled in a perfectly straight line. I suspect it works that same way for a lot of people. The talks always kind of veer off in different directions, touching on this thing or that thing along the way, before arriving at the conclusion. So when I was writing this book, I wanted to be careful to keep that feeling intact, and that spirit intact. It just felt natural. 10. You mentioned earlier that this isn't a history book. Was there a cutoff point in time that you decided on? What I did is I just traveled backward to 1980, the season that Larry Bird and Magic Johnson entered the league, which was the birth of the modern NBA, and then I walked forward from there. There are tiny pieces and footnotes that reference points and events and people from before then, but all of the bigger thoughts and questions and ideas are built up around people and things from 1980 forward. 11. Why did you ask Reggie Miller to write the foreword? I grew up in San Antonio, and so the Spurs were of course my favorite basketball team growing up and still are my favorite basketball team now. Reggie, though. Reggie was the first basketball player I ever loved. I remember watching him play a game on TV in middle school in the mid-90s and just being absolutely in awe. He was doing all of the things I thought were cool, shooting threes, talking shit, shoving people, etc. And when you're 13, 14, 15 years old, the only stuff that matters to you is stuff that's cool, you know what I'm saying? He was a king to me, a basketball lord of sorts. I watched Reggie without fail for a good decade after I found him, all the way up until his retirement in 2005. His last game was a loss to the Pistons in the playoffs. In the final seasons, Pacers coach Rick Carlisle called a timeout so he could take Reggie out so the crowd could cheer for him. Reggie walked toward the bench and raised his hand, and everyone was just glowing with love, and it was this very touching, very moving scene. And right when it was about to end, Larry Brown, who was coaching the Pistons, called a timeout too, and the only reason he did was so everyone could keep cheering for Reggie. The camera cut to the crowd, and it was person after person after person in tears. Even after all these years, it remains the only time I ever cried while watching someone's final game. I didn't know in that moment I'd eventually write a book about basketball and that Reggie would write the foreword for it. But I did know I was going to carry Reggie in my heart forever, and that